Trigger warnings. Suicide. Murder. I saw the man again yesterday. He was big and tall, taller than Father. He stood at the end of the hall and made an angry face. Sometimes he yelled. He didn't see me though. I was hiding, and anyway he was looking at Jack. Jack looked a little bit scared and also angry. But when Father and Mother came, he was quickly not angry. Father made a strange man come in, and the strange man said some things and went away. Father and Mother were not angry anymore. Today Jack was sleeping, and I saw the man go into his room. I heard Jack yell. Me and Father and Mother came in and the man was gone, but Jack turned the light on and didn't sleep. Connie, I don't know what to do. The exorcist came and went, but the ghosts just changed. We can't sell the house. There's nowhere else to go. She pressed her fingers against her temples and looked at her husband. Her husband looked tired. We can have the kids stay at Pastor Blair's for a night. Absolutely not. We barely know the man. Susan, it's the only solution left. No. We went to Pastor's house today. His wife was nice and made us cake. Then Father and Mother told me and Jack we were going to sleep here tonight. I didn't want to go, but Pastor said I could have more cake for breakfast. I like cake. Me and Jack slept in the same room. The bed was very comfy. I fell asleep very fast. I woke up because there was a lady screaming. She was like the man because she only looked at Jack. Jack just looked scared this time, even when Pastor came in and the lady screamed louder. We went home after that. I didn't get any more cake. It's following the kids, isn't it? Maybe they've just been in the town for a while. And we're new. And they don't like that. Pastor knew the woman. Said she was from a town over. And right as rain a week ago. Maybe the ghosts flock here, I don't know. We have to do something, Michael. An old lady came to our house today. She hung weird-smelling stuff all around the house. Mother and Father told us not to touch it. They said it would make the people go away. They've gone away for now. We can't leave the herbs up. They're stinking up the house. It's just a few more days. Father took the weird stuff down. Then when I was sleeping, I woke up again because there was a man standing at Jack's door. Father and Mother are very angry now. I was having a nice dream. Me and Jack were at the beach. I've never been to the beach, so I don't know what it looks like, but it looked like what I think the beach would look like. We have to move. There's no other option. Fine. We can stay with Marge for a bit and figure out what to do. Father and Mother and Jack packed everything up and we are leaving. I think it's because of the people. They keep coming into Jack's room, and Jack is very scared and angry, I think. We got into the wagon and we went away. Father says it will be a long time before we get somewhere. As the family sleeps, the ghosts hover near. We got to a big town. We went to a house, and there was a lady I didn't know. Mother says she is Father's sister. I didn't know Father had a sister. When we slept, a little girl came. She didn't scream like the others, and she didn't wake Jack up. I only saw her because I went to take a pee. I asked her what her name was, and she said, Lucy. I asked her where she lived, and she said she didn't have a home. We played together until I got too tired, and then she went away. I slept for a long time, so when I woke up, the sun was high in the sky. I hope I can see Lucy again. She seems very nice, even though she's a bit sad. Anything yet, Jack? Nothing, Mother. I talked to Lucy, and she said something very strange. She said she was dead. I asked her how she could be dead as she was sitting here talking to me. She said that she was trapped and could not move on until the person who made her dead was gone. I said that I was sure they would be gone soon. The neighbors have been complaining. Of what? Apparently our little girl and her playmatey have been staying up talking too late. But she doesn't have a playmate. Exactly. Lucy said that she couldn't stay. She said she was passing the job on to someone else. They're coming again. It's a different one this time. That doesn't matter. We'll never escape them. Suddenly, both parents noticed their daughter standing in the doorway. What is it, sweetie? She said she'd leave if the person who made her dead was gone. There's a moment of shocked silence. What, sweetie? Lucy said she'd leave if the person who made her dead was gone. Down the hall, the brother slips away. He knows what he has to do. Jack didn't come home. Father and mother are very worried. They got the big people with funny hats to go look for him. I saw mother crying. No one else came today. It felt a little bit lonely. I miss Lucy. Officer, he has to be out there somewhere. I'm sorry, ma'am, but he's nowhere to be found. We've put up flyers and had search teams. It seems he does not want to be found. He has to. He has to come home. Later that night, the parents stare out the window. The father says, they've stopped coming though. From the kitchen, the voice of the father's sister says, good riddance. Jack has been gone for a long time. The men with the funny hats came to our door again. They look serious. Father and mother rush out with them. Annie Marge is taking care of me. Fire-colored leaves scatter on the uneven wet road, drifting through the air as a light blue, 1980 Chevy Silverado weaves in and out of turns. An Aussie shepherd sticks his head out the passenger window and enjoys the breeze. Coda, get your head out of the window, the driver says, blowing cigarette smoke. It's going to rain. He reaches towards the dog to pull him into the truck, but the uneven terrain causes the vehicle to lurch back and forth, causing Coda to fall off his seat. You gotta use your seatbelt, the man says, smiling as he reaches across the seat to buckle him in. You're an old man now, you know that? The man looks into the rearview mirror, and the smile fades. Looking at his own reflection, he sees that his hair has lost its color over the years, and his tan skin is cracking. His eyes have become a sad shade of green. His closely trimmed beard, once dark and bold, has become gray and withered. The man sighs. How about we listen to some music, old man? He says to Coda. He opens the glove compartment, revealing a stack of old rock and roll tapes. As he reaches, he can't help but let out a string of loud and painful coughs, causing something to fall out. The object lands next to a cigarette butt in the truck's ashtray. The man pushes his shirt to the side to see two stitched SAAs marked on his chest, just above his heart. He looks at them in concern for a moment, but pushes the thoughts away. He's just old. He has a few other tattoos he can't remember getting. No big deal. The man reaches into the ashtray to pick up what fell, and brushes it off to see a picture of a young girl no more than 6 years old. He smiles and sets the picture aside. He slides the tape into its compartment on the dashboard. Sweet Child O' Mine by Guns N' Roses plays. Coda howls along. As time passes, the clouds get thicker, and a heavy rain begins to fall. The truck reaches a gate, and the man rolls down his window to greet the Acadia National Park ranger. Good evening, Jacob, the ranger says. Hey, Rosie. Heading out? Yep. 3-hour drive home to Moosehead. You know that. I never understood why you'd come here rather than stay at Moosehead Lake. Oh, it's not me. Coda loves it here. Jacob gives Coda an affectionate pet on the head. And I've got all the time in the world. Drive home safely. You know how main roads get on rainy days. Jacob nods as he presses on the gas pedal and slowly pulls away, leaving a deep mud track on the road. After a while, his mind drifts back to the photo of the young girl. It shows her smiling as she poses on a swing set. Behind her, a much younger Jacob pushes her on the swing, cigarette in mouth. November 17th, 1989. Jacob remembers Dr. Who. It's been 10 years. Emma always loved the swings. To her, higher was never too high. Shortly after the picture was taken, she jumped off at the peak of the swing's height, and when she hit the ground, she twisted her ankle. She cried for half an hour, Jacob remembers. He remembers how after a minute, she hopped back on and demanded that he push her even higher. Jacob's brow furrows. What happened after that? As he drives on, Jacob looks at the time on the dashboard of the truck. 12:47 am. The trees add a layer of darkness the moonlight can't penetrate, and the rain dances as it hits the windshield. He looks over at Coda, who has fallen asleep with his face squished against the window. Jacob is beginning to fall asleep himself as well. Long-distance drives were never easy for him. He feels his eyelids grow heavier, nodding at every stretch. He allows his eyes to shut long enough for the hood of the truck to clip the road barrier. Oh shit! Jacob screams. The truck barrels through the barrier and skids off the wet road. He careens down a hill and into the trees. Mud splatters over the windshield, and the head of the vehicle grazes a tree, slowing its descent just long enough for Jacob to regain control. He slams his foot on the brake. As the truck comes to a stop, he takes a sigh of relief and turns to Coda. "Aw, you pissed yourself," he says. Coda's big eyes look around wildly with his tail tucked between his legs. Fair enough. Jacob grabs a flashlight and steps out of the truck. At this time of night, no one will be driving by. He shines the light onto the hood to see black smoke seeping through the openings. Great. He throws the driver door open and tries to start the truck, but it groans and sputters out. "Come on, big girl, you can do it," he says. He turns his keys in the ignition again, but doesn't get a response. He punches the steering wheel multiple times. Shit. Coda starts growling. "Sorry," Jacob responds, but the dog turns to barking. "Hey, what's wrong, old man?" The dog dashes out the door into the forest, brushing past Jacob and knocking the flashlight out of his hand. "Coda!" Jacob runs after him into the darkness. He blindly rushes through the trees and branches, stumbling over roots. The jagged edges of branches dig into him as he passes, tearing his clothes and shredding his skin. "Coda, come back!" Though bleeding and exhausted, Jacob pushes on. Ahead, the trees are more visible. He moves towards them, leading to a clearing where the moon is bright enough to be seen clearly through the clouds. His eyes follow the leaves falling around him, leading his gaze to a small wooden house in the middle of the field. The moonlight reflects against a pond in the distance, emitting a pattern against the wood. The water ripples as the rain falls, distorting the moon's image. A single swing set stands alone near the rear of the house. The grass in the area seems untouched, and pink and purple-colored flowers are scattered throughout the clearing. An odd mix of dread, déjà vu consumes Jacob as he searches frantically for Coda, knowing that he heard his growl from here. It is pouring rain, and Jacob is completely drenched. The blood oozing out of his wounds speckles his clothing. He wipes the bloody mix of water away from his eyes and sees Coda in the middle of the clearing, snarling at a dark silhouette in front of the house. "Coda!" Jacob calls. He takes a step forward, ready to run. He watches as the silhouette moves behind the house. Coda lunges towards it, moving out of Jacob's view. Crack! A dog's yelp penetrates the night. Then all becomes quiet but the patter of rain. Coda! Jacob yells. He hesitates before he moves behind the house, but sees nothing. Jacob feels his chest cry out in pain and confusion, and he grabs at it, letting out another string of heavy coughs. 2 marks bleed through his shirt. He moves to the front of the house and bashes his fist against the door. "Hey," he calls. "Where's my dog?" He waits a few seconds and gets no response. He peers through the windows, but there is nothing to see. He looks at the door and back at his hand. White dust from the door mixes with his blood, forming a thin layer of red around his knuckles. As the rain falls, it creates little craters in the layer, as if the drops were trying to create more holes in his body. The wind picks up, and the clouds cover the moon. Once again, Jacob stands in total darkness. The air becomes heavier and more powerful, picking up leaves and sticks and sending them to rip apart his already broken skin. The wind blasts his face with frigid air and icy rain. He falls to the ground and tries to take cover into his coat, but he can still feel his skin being sliced. With nowhere to go, he furiously bangs his fist against the wooden door. "Please," he begs. It all stops. The wind, the rain, the darkness. The clouds move away, and the moonlight shines upon the clearing, revealing Jacob to be a bloody mess. A dim light flickers in the house, and he hears the sound of a voice so rough and sharp that he can feel it scrape against his brain. "You're back." It doesn't sound human, but something about it feels familiar. "Oh!" Jacob moves closer to the windows, but sees nothing. He curls his hand into a trembling fist once more to knock. This time the door flies open. Jacob scrambles inside and neglects to shut the door. He places his hands on the floor to push himself to his knees and winces. Once up, he takes his first look around. A light sparks, then ebbs and flows from a single candle in the center of the room, causing the length of Jacob's shadow to fluctuate against the walls. Empty picture frames hang from a saturated yellow wallpaper, patterned with the same purple flowers as outside. The air, dense and warm, invades Jacob's nostrils with the smell of ash. He knows this place, but from where? Within his own mind, he hears the inhuman voice call towards him again, this time in the direction of a dark hallway in the corner of the room. "You'll never stay away." "Who are you?" Jacob calls out. "What do you—" He has another coughing fit, throwing him to the floor on all fours as he clutches his chest. It feels as if something is digging deep into him, as if it were wrapping itself around his heart. A shadow moves against the walls until it engulfs Jacob in darkness. He squints his eyes and raises his arms to protect his face against an attack. Instead, he feels something wet touch his elbow. Confused, he opens his eyes wider and sees Coda licking his arm. "Coda," Jacob says. He wheezes and reaches towards the dog, which barks once and moves into his open arms, rubbing his head against Jacob's chest. "You're okay." He smiles and rubs its head, running his fingers through its thick coat as if it were the first time he's done so. "I don't know what's going on here, but we need to go. Come on." His palms and knees scrape against the rough texture of the floor as he attempts to stand. He motions to Coda to come, but the dog doesn't obey. "Come on, old man. Let's get out of here." He looks around, paranoid that something else will come out of the darkness. "Let's go. I'm serious." Still, the dog stays put. It growls at Jacob. "Now." Jacob stomps his foot, and suddenly, the whole house shakes. The picture frames fall off the walls, and the wallpaper begins to rip upwards. Koda's eyes turn red, and his fur sheds from his body until his spotty pink skin shows. His ears and fangs lengthen, and his entire body triples in size. The monster lunges at Jacob with his teeth bared and his claws outstretched. Jacob screams and covers his face with his arms, anticipating to meet his end by his own dog. Nothing happens. The monster is gone. He slowly opens his eyes behind his braced arms, and he sees that the house is still intact. The picture frames return to their places along the wallpaper. Maybe they never changed in the first place. "The hell is going on here?" he says. Jacob turns to the open door to leave, but it slams shut on its own. Fearing for his life, he uses all his strength on the doorknob, but can't even turn it. He throws all his weight against the door, but his physical strength succumbs to his mental weakness. He slides to his knees again, defeated. No use. That voice again. That terrible, devilish, familiar voice. Jacob covers his ears, tears flowing down his face through the crevices of his cracked skin and semi-dried blood. Not that voice. Please, oh God, not that voice. November 17th, 1989. Dole. A new light flickers from inside the dark hallway, shining upon a small and circular table. It is tall enough to reach Jacob's waist and holds a lone picture frame. "Get up." Jacob winces at the sheer volume of the command. He wobbles as he lifts himself and limps down the hallway. He stands over the table and hesitates before taking the frame. His bloody hands leave red stains along the silver edge. His tired, withering eyes move in saccadic motion as he tries to process the information of the photo. A young girl on the swings, the same as from his truck. Only in this version, he looks as he does now, skin shredded and blood stained with dead eyes. He looks closer and sees that the girl is also transformed in the photo. Something in the reflection of the frame catches his eye. He tries to breathe, but doesn't feel a take in oxygen. Every part of him stiffens when he sees her. A young, pale-skinned girl stands in front of him. Her eyes bleed and her skin is flaking, just like Jacob's. He recognizes her instantly. Though it has been 10 years, she has not aged since. He can only let out a whisper. "Emma." She moves towards him with inhuman speed and pushes her fingers into Jacob's chest cavity. He doesn't even react. She pulls with a great force, ripping what feels like his soul from his own body. He collapses immediately, vision fading as her footsteps move closer. A gentle calm sweeps over his body, and all goes dark. November 17th, 1989. The air kisses the skin with a soft, cool touch. "Sweet Child O' Mine" plays faintly from a radio as a young Koda tries to catch the leaves falling around him. A swing set creaks as it rocks back and forth in front of a house surrounded by purple and pink out-of-season flowers. "Push me higher, Daddy. I want to go higher," Emma says. She swings in quickly, almost catching Jacob off guard as he tries to light a cigarette in between pushes. "All right," he says. "But promise me you won't jump." "I promise," Emma replies. She looks towards him, and her smile fades. "Wait, you promised me you wouldn't smoke anymore." "Oh," Jacob teases. He grins as a woman walks up to him, holding a Polaroid camera. She kisses him on the cheek. "You did promise, though," the woman says, playfully winking at Jacob. She clicks the camera to print the picture. She fans it and hands it off to Jacob, who takes a quick look, and slides it into the back pocket of his jeans. "Thanks, babe." "Thanks, babe," Emma mocks. "Hey, 6-year-olds shouldn't mock their parents," Jacob scolds. He pushes her swing a bit harder now. "Higher, I want to go to heaven." Jacob and Emma's mother look at each other with incredulous smiles. "Yeah, okay, Emma," Jacob says. He gives her another solid push. Emma smiles again and squeals with glee as she reaches forward, trying to touch the clouds. She leans forward, and the seat of the swing gives out. Without the support, she slips and falls. "Wake up." "You're not Emma," Jacob sputters. She turns, giving him his first full glimpse of her under decent light. Her neck, tilted at an angle, is broken. The bone protrudes from her peeling skin, while black blood falls from her empty eyes. She moves with the same demeanor as in her past life, but with sporadic twitches. She slowly moves towards Jacob, cradling something in her hands. Her mouth moves but makes no physical sound. Even in death, you cannot escape your sin. She opens her hands, revealing a beating heart. Jacob's beating heart. The blood oozes between her fingers and onto the floor, welling at his knees. "Eat the red fruit." "The red fruit?" Jacob wheezes. "Penance. Eat the red fruit." Jacob turns his face away, but it is no use. Emma wraps her peeling hands around his mouth with inhuman speed and shoves the red fruit into his protesting mouth. He is resistant to chew at first, but his teeth have already made contact. The texture is tough and chewy, but still soft enough to break down. The juices are warm and taste like iron. He never realized iron could taste so delicious, so perfect. He begins to chew faster, harder. The taste becomes irresistible. Juices flow down his chin, the color matching that of the openings of his ripped skin and bending at every corner. He wants it. He wants to eat the red fruit. Before Jacob knows it, he finishes it. He weakly looks into Emma's eyes for the last time. His entire body goes limp, and he stops breathing. "Daddy will die forever by the red fruit." Fire-colored leaves scatter on the uneven wet road, flying and drifting through the air as a light blue 1980 Chevy Silverado weaves in and out of turns. An Aussie shepherd falls off the passenger seat. "How about we listen to some music, old man?" Jacob says. He opens the glove compartment, revealing a stack of old rock and roll tapes. He reaches with one hand to pick one. As he opens the case, he lets out a string of loud and painful coughs. He feels pain on his chest, and he pushes his shirt to the side to see 3 stitched, marked on his chest. But he's just old. He's got other tattoos he can't remember getting. No big deal. Falling asleep has always been a difficult job for me. The cold night awakens my soul, at least whatever is left of it. Every night, the same old dream, which slowly starts haunting and becomes my only reality. I ask myself every night, when will this end? The only answer I get is another night full of misery. These constant thoughts ramble in my head throughout the day, and with these thoughts I dim the lights, close my eyes, and let the horror consume me. Good morning, Ma. The daylight and her smile, what else do I live for? After another dreadful night, I try to wake up with all my might, brushing away the thought of the darkness. These days the alarm clock does not really help, but Tia does. Her little voice pulling me out of a haunted place I relive every night. I breathe in. It still feels difficult to consume this fresh air, and I try to start my day. Standing in the kitchen with the morning cup of coffee, I think about the abrupt decision of coming back to this quaint little town, which was once my home, away from the busy days, like in the city. The city, where I drowned my youth just so I could escape these nightmares. I don't really remember when the nightmares really started, but all I remember is it has been a part of me. The city did provide an escape from them, at least most of the times. Some nights would pass by because of the bitter combination of tequila and rum intoxicating me to sleep, some with coffee and work to keep me awake. So far, the only thing that helped was Tia. Tia came into my life like sunshine. Who could believe a night of intoxication would change my life? Being a single mother has been difficult, but Tia has been the only medicine to the unsettling feeling in haunted nights. She almost took away all the pain I had, and all that was left was love. Coming back to my hometown with her was the best decision I had ever taken. But with this happiness also came back the dreadful nightmares. I might pack an extra sandwich with pickles. Her voice breaks me from my thoughts. I pack her tiffin and drop her at the bus stop. Coming back home all alone is not the ideal kind of day, but I have to. I go to my room and try to wash off the uneasy feeling. I soak myself in the bathtub and rest my head, trying to gather my thoughts together. I have to meet a few deadlines and I have no clue how it is all going to turn out. I need to push off the chaos and work on the articles. Cracking. I hear the door to my room creak open. I get up unsettled and wrap myself in a robe. I come out to see who it is. At this hour, the house is only to me. I search around and I see it. The shadow. The shadow that creeps in my dreams at night and haunts me. I follow it, but it disappears. My heart beats faster as I try to fathom the surrounding. Am I going crazy? I turn around and try to understand how the locked door opened. I go back to my room and change into a pair of pajamas. Throughout everything I do, I feel something lurking around me. The temperature of the room is going down, and I don't understand if this chill is because of the temperature or my fear. I try to check the thermostat. It shows the temperature to be normal. I try and call the handyman to check the thermostat, but couldn't connect. I go by the hall to the kitchen and fix myself a coffee. This is just an uneasy feeling, I tell myself, and start working. But the temperature of the room is dropping every second. The backyard has turned dark, as if the night has come early. Am I in one of my dreams? This question starts haunting me when I feel an intense pain, as if someone has bit me on the back of my leg. I see nothing. I am in excruciating pain, and I feel uneasy. This feels so real. I try calling the doctor, but the line does not connect. I try to run out of the room. It looks windy, and the atmosphere has turned out to be as if it's midnight. I check my watch, and it shows 11:03 a.m. It is still close to noon. I try to open the door when I feel my hand being pulled away from the door. I look back and I black out. Mom, you okay? I feel lightheaded as I wake to the voice of a scared Tia, sitting next to me holding my hands. I am in my room, tucked in my bed. I can't recollect what happened. All I remember is the feeling, the irksome, chilly feeling of someone around me. I try hard to remember what made me pass out, and all I can remember is the coldness of the night. It felt as if we were in the woods, and the smell of wet soil. I close my eyes and try to focus even more, and I cuddle Tia as if it is the last time I could ever do this, and I hear the familiar voice of Roy. He rushes in the room as soon as he realizes I am awake. "How are you now?" he asked. "Much better." I forced the words out of my dry throat. He looked worried, and I inquired how he turned out to be my knight in shining armor. He was my primary emergency contact, and the 911 call I placed for help actually did go through. The rest of the day went by, thinking about what happened to me today, and what should I do about it. Wah! A few days had passed by, and I met a therapist. This wasn't my first therapy session, but this one was very important. This was the first time I felt it happening to me in the middle of the day. It wasn't a dream anymore. The therapist had the same answer for this recurring phenomenon. He said these were symptoms of PTSD, but could not explain the reason for the same. I also met a priest. I don't believe in ghosts. Neither do I believe in the presence of spirits and demons. But this looked like the only option to find peace. The feeling of being trapped in my own house was unbearable. I had a lot of dark dreams where the shadow tries to lead me somewhere. But this was the first time I felt like this was more than a dream. I felt like I could be trapped forever. Trapped in a small space with barely any room for air and the overwhelming darkness. That could break one's soul. I had to try every possible way. After talking to our church's priest, I made my way to pick up Tia. When I reached the school, the teacher told me that Tia had already left. I went home and waited for her to come back. It was 8:30, and this was the first time Tia had not been home, and she did not even call to inform the reason for the same. I called a few of her friends and found out that Tia wasn't with any one of them. Panic settled in. I had to know where she is. I understood from Jeff, Tia's friend, that she sometimes hung out near the outskirts of the town by the old yard. I walked out of the house with my coat and the car keys. I was feeling restless and I had already tried her number a couple of times. I drove to the yard and searched for her all around. Surprisingly, the place was familiar. I walked past the broken little cottage and the woods started. Small little plants and creepy insects, the silver of the moon providing a little lights to walk past. I called Tia another time before switching on the flashlight of my cell phone. I walked a little more until I started feeling cold all of a sudden, and the dreadful smell of something rotten. I kept walking and trying to call Tia at the same time. At some point I lost my cell phone reception. Thank goodness I had informed Roy before leaving. I walked past, and suddenly I started feeling that my feet felt wet. I had my boots on, but my feet felt like they were in this mushy land. I try to get rid of the feeling, but I can't. But I walk away as I need to find Tia. I walk through the woods and all of a sudden I see Tia, her face bruised, leg bleeding and her clothes torn. I run to save her, but how much ever I try, I couldn't reach her. I howl out a cry of help with all the might I could gather. I can't stop weeping, and neither can't she. I see her eyes, the pain, the anger, and all I could think about was the shadow. The shadow was here. The shadow is behind all of this. Suddenly I feel I couldn't breathe, not because of the pain or the fear, but because I felt like someone trapped me somewhere in a small space. I could feel the air but couldn't breathe. I felt trapped, and I ached for my daughter. I was looking at her face, bruised and scratched, felt like a rabid dog did it. I stared at her face and stared, and something different but familiar happened. I could see someone behind Tia, a shadow, the same shadow that haunted my dreams. For the first time, the shadow felt to be so close to me. I was scared for Tia and wanted to save her, but I was trapped and couldn't move. I begged to the shadow. I cried and asked Tia to move. I could see my wrist bleeding for no apparent reason, and I could feel the pain. I looked at the shadow and found a familiar face, and I lost my consciousness. The next day I found myself in the hospital with Tia by my side with no sign of bruises. I had a broken wrist and an head injury, which I could not explain. Thanks to Roy, who came to save me. The entire time in the hospital, the only thought I had was of the shadow. I knew her. I don't know how, why, and when, but I knew her. The next few weeks were just sweaty and restless nights, and the fear that I may lose Tia. I tried my best to keep calm and think it was a psychotic episode, but all of it was real. I had constant bruise marks which did not go away, and the injuries of that night were not fading away anytime soon. The doctors couldn't find a medically suitable reason for these injuries. I continued therapy. I was scared, but this time, it was more about Tia than I, and this time, I couldn't go wrong. It was the night before the school's founder party when things got worse. I got ready to be the chaperone for the school's Founder Day ball. It felt normal after a very long time. I was wearing a beautiful dress and Tia looked so pretty. She left a few minutes before me with Jeff. I grabbed my car keys, and that's when my wrist felt like it broke completely, and I heard the shrill noise of Tia shouting. I ran to the door, but couldn't open it. I heard someone bang the door from the other side, and it made me jump. What? Was it Tia? The knocks? The constant knocks on the door felt so familiar. The unbearable noise. The storm, it felt like I'd been through this before. Déjà vu, that's what I felt the actions that were going on to be like. Finally I could see the shadow, and I looked into her eyes, and suddenly her face became more visible. Her face was so familiar, and finally I knew why this is happening to me. Why it all started. It all started the summer of '93. My cousin came to our place, and since that summer nothing has been normal. It all started with the same old nagging and filthy comments that we shoot at each other. The same old, who is the best competitions. We grew up with this constant hate we had for each other. But this summer it had to be different. We were grown up and about to start our lives. That night I crossed my limits. It was a simple act of revenge. I locked her out. It was cold. My aunt was not there, and she needed to be punished for stealing the guy I liked, for stealing Roy. It was the Founders Day ball, and I did not know things would turn the way they are right now. I saw her kissing Roy, and everything turned upside down. Today had to be Roy and my day. I was so angry that I asked a few of my friends to teach her a lesson. I locked her out in the blazing cold all by herself. She knocked the door. She kept on knocking. But I just ignored it all and went upstairs to the warmth of my room. All night she knocked the door, banged it, and tried everything that one can think of. She went back to the yard, where there was the after-school party, and my friend led her to the woods. It had to be a simple small prank, but the hell broke loose next day. The next morning, it all had to end. But it did not. I woke up to sirens and shouting, cries and chaos. She was dead. She was stripped down and ripped apart. We were told it was wolves that attacked her. She was bitten and scratched, her face bruised and feet soiled. It had filled my heart with pain and guilt. I felt horrible. I felt so horrible that I omitted that part of my life completely. I forgot all about it and erased the gruesome deed I had done. But since then, nothing was the same. Every night the same dreams, the same knocking at my window, the barking of the dogs, the noise of the storm when the nights are silent. No one believes me, but I could see her shadow every day lurking in the dark. Finally, it all made sense. I hear the storm cool down and the bruised face of the shadow approaching me. I see her smiling at my misery. I want to apologize, but I am so scared that no word is coming out of my mouth. Her pale and scarred face inches closer to me and I stop breathing. I thought the end was near, but at this moment, that did not scare me. All I could think about was the past and the guilt I hid for such a long time. Maybe this is where it would all end. Only relief being the fact that Tia was safe. I could feel the bite on my leg again, but I can't move, especially when her face is inches apart from me. Slowly I feel every bit of the pain she felt, the nails of the dogs piercing in my skin, the way her wrists broke as she fell down while running, the bruises on my face, and finally the last attempt when she tried to hide in a small passage between an old rustic broken stone cave or whatever that was. Suddenly, the land got mushy and disoriented, and the soil slid down and stopped the air. She was alive, but she could not breathe, and I felt the same. I thought this was my end. I wanted to apologize. She wasn't supposed to go so far in the woods. I closed my eyes and let the pain take over me. When Tia opened the room and my world shattered. I wanted her to run away, but she ran to me as I was on the ground. I was scared and looked around to find the shadow, but she was long gone. Since that day, the dreams have become more real, and my life has become a game where I relive that night again and again. The pain, the fear, the filth, all of it. Every night I am running through the woods and getting trapped, losing my breath and waiting for death. She was locked out one night, and I am trapped in forever. He hurried up the street, trying to catch up to the elderly lady. "Ma'am? Excuse me, but could I trouble you for directions?" She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Where to?" He took one breath of air, flattening his vest, before answering, "Rocher Manor." She turned on her heel, wagging a finger at him. "What business have you got there?" He straightened. "It was my father's property, ma'am. I'm here to sell it." "Up the hill there." She pointed to a thin, cobbled path winding between the shops on the main road. Before he could thank her, she addressed him firmly. "Now, don't you go snooping around here for long. This town isn't home for fellows like you." His eyes widened, eyebrows hitting his hairline. She looked him over appraisingly, before adding an eerie warning. "This town doesn't grow on you, son. It grows in you. Don't let it fester." Bowie. Rocher Manor sat, perched right behind the hill. Chimney peeking over the grass was the first sign of any life for miles. As he turned the key in the lock, relieved father hadn't thought to change the locks once more before his death. The sun had already melted into the horizon, and the purple had edged into the sky. The mist had gathered on the moors, pooling across the grass, and he could see nothing but the occasional thistle bush or treetop. The house was just how he had left it 20 years ago, only with a thin layer of dust settling on the furniture. His summons had been delayed in the mail. The house had sat curiously empty for weeks. Turning the lock firmly behind him, he started making his way up the stairs. The wood had started to rot, and he didn't hear creaks as much as feel his feet sinking through each stair. A white linen sheet had been pulled cleanly over the mattress, which was no doubt infested with some bug or other. The sheet of dust was absent, and the window blown wide open, the wind howling its displeasure. Placing his trunk on the ottoman, he crawled under the sheets. The day of traveling had him delusional, and he wasted no time changing his clothes. The last thing he heard before drifting off, likely some machination of his mind, was a slow, rhythmic rocking. 3. The buyers were scheduled to collect their keys for Sunday, and while the house may remain empty for months, after that, it was no longer his problem. He piled all the house keys his father had collected over the years on the dinner table. He removed most of the locks his father had placed on doors and windows, although some he physically could not move. He piled those keys on the dinner table too. He collected the key to every desk and every wardrobe and added those keys to the pile. The afternoon was spent cleaning, removing furniture that was too rotten to be considered an addition to the new buyers, and dusting what remained. He knew not how his father had lived in these conditions. The old woman's warning only resurfaced when his head hit the pillow a second night when the rocking returned. He could hear it clearly now. It came from above him, from the attic. He resolved to have a look tomorrow and promptly drifted off. 40 wine. The attic seemed barren in the daylight, absent all the shadows that had scared him as a boy. Nonetheless, there sat the rocking chair. In the center of the room, empty. That night, he watched the clock, the temptation of his bed forgotten. When the largest hand hit the 9, he could make it out once more. He sneaked up the stairs, iron bar in his hands. He was his father's son after all, and arrived at the top of the stairs. In the chair that had been empty only hours ago sat a thin, translucent silhouette. A little girl. "Hello," her wispy voice said. "Have you come back for me?" He moved out of the shadows, and her face fell for a moment. She spoke once more. "I don't know you. I live here now. You're Martin's son, aren't you?" She giggled, a high, echoing laugh. "What a pity. My eyes would have suited you better." His voice came out rougher than intended. "What?" "You would have been much more handsome." He moved further out of the shadows. "Excuse me, but who are you?" "I might gift them to you anyway." She surveyed his frame, now illuminated by the light. "He would have liked that," she added to herself. Growing desperate, he added a frustrated, "Whew. Good night, pretty boy." She disappeared. If he hadn't done so already, he resolved to leave this town at the earliest instant. Vit day. The next night, the rocking returned, and whatever foolish, naive hope he'd had that last night had been the end of it disappeared with it. He moved up the stairs once more, drawn in by a strange, morbid curiosity. If anything went wrong, he reasoned, she was just a little girl. She couldn't hurt him. Her glassy eyes surveyed him upon his entry. "I hadn't expected you so early." She spoke as if she had invited him over for tea, as if she wasn't haunting his attic. "Why are you here?" He spoke in a clear-cut tone, hoping it would have an influence. Her wispy lip curled up into a smirk. "Aren't you pleased to see me?" "What are you doing here?" He moved closer. "What even are you? You may be a pretty boy, but it seems there's nothing up here." She tapped her temple and burst into giggles. "I'm a ghost, obviously." He gave no acknowledgement of her insult. "And why are you in my house then?" She stopped laughing and her glassy eyes bored into his. "You know, Martin liked me a lot more than you do." He held her gaze. "And how do you know my dad? Why are you haunting his house?" "You ask too many questions. You don't answer enough." They held a battle of wills, holding fierce eye contact, waiting for the other to back down. She blinked first. "Martin was my fiancé." As she caught his eyes again, she giggled. "Really, my eyes would have suited you so much better. I really must gift them to you someday." Privately, he thought her glassy eyes deserved no place near his body. He returned to his train of questioning, settling himself on the floor. "You were married to my father." "Arranged to be married. Our parents were neighbors, and thought it prudent." Martin didn't agree. She tilted her white head, adding in a dazed tone, "Although I'm sure he regrets it now." "How?" "Hush, pretty boy." She placed her hands on her hips, her baby lips in a pout. "How can I tell a story if you keep interrupting me?" He gave her a regretful smile, and she continued. "He was very much in love with a girl from the village. Some Sylvia. That's my mother's." A crease appeared between her eyebrows as she whispered, "Hush!" She collected herself, dusting off her translucent dress, and continued. "And so, he refused to marry me. His parents would never have agreed, and you know how much he wanted their money." She paused, and he nodded. "So, he decided there was nothing to it but to get rid of me. One night, he dragged me into the moors and made sure that's where I stayed." His eyes were now wide as saucers. His old, senile father. She gave another laugh, full of merriment. "Luckily for me, I got the chance to haunt him, and I've stayed by him all these years." She looked him directly in the eye. "Don't you think he regrets it now?" He could not answer. He got up, dusted himself off, and took off down the stairs, never meeting those glassy eyes once. Vada Dory. The rocking didn't stop that night, nor the next. 8.8. By the end of the week, he had never been more overjoyed to hand off his father's hoard of keys and take the next train inland. He had not slept for a week. Inden tighter. I knee. Ow. I towel. Bah. Always. Only years later would he dare to think back to the encounter again. Of his week spent with the little girl, dressed in a white veil, halfway between our world and theirs. It was the day his own daughter stared up at him with those same glassy eyes. She'd gifted them to him after all. His bright electric blue eyes seemed flicker to a crimson red. His teeth grinding together, lips parted, a low growl resonating from his deep within his throat. His hands clenched together, itching to throw a punch. His feet are shoulder-width apart, ready to launch an assault. His golden hair glowing more than usual, brightening up the darkness around him. But instead, his brother gets him to sit back in the booth, only to watch the show. She stands across the bar room, leaning against the tall bar. Her tall stature and the glitter around her eyes shine from the dancing lights around her. Her deep violet dress shows off her chest. Her purple sapphire eyes scanning around the room, looking for something or someone. Her very essence drawing in the crowd. Men each taking a chance, trying to buy her a drink, trying to ask her to dance. Without having to say a word, just the look of disapproval is enough to make them scram. Soon her eyes pass over the strong-willed man, sitting at a large booth in the corner, his comical-ridden twin trying to keep his attention. But those electric blues have had their eye on something else. Their eyes meet, and a smirk glides across her thin lips. Her laughter is heard through the malicious stare she holds. He won't give her the satisfaction of seeing his jealousy. The next man to walk towards her, she pulls in close, her arms wrapping around his neck, whispering sweet nothings to him. Oh, what he doesn't know won't hurt him right. His hands grip her waist, letting her have her way with him. She nibbles his neck, getting him hot, knowing it herself is all a show. Her night is about more than getting her drink on. Her night continues, dancing and drinking. Her eyes glancing over at the golden-haired man every now and then. Locking eyes, seeing his anger in her doings. His twin unable to keep him occupied anymore. He tries to make him head out the door, but the glass in his hand shatters. He won't move from the booth, not without her, though they both know it would take a miracle for her waltz out with her in his arms. Her jewels-like eyes haze over from the alcohol integrated in her systems. She lets a man pull her onto the floor, tangling together in a dance of drunkenness. His hands keep their hold on her waist as she grinds against him, sliding down to her hips. Not caring at all about who's watching, she lets him continue, knowing it's only fueling the fire, and her arms wrap around his neck. All eyes are attracted to her. She is the star of the show. She is a rose in a sea of daisies. She, a delicate flower, attracting all those around her. But watch out for her thorns, for they won't just prick you, they will tear you to shreds. He's had enough by this point. She is being tossed from man to man. Not that she minds, but he's done watching his girl get it on with someone else. She may think she never wants to see him again, but the way she is acting tells a whole different story. Her short glances his way, the way she keeps her back to him, showing him her curves. The look she gives him when she has her arms around another man. A boy has his lips pressed against her neck, biting the sensitive skin. The giggles she is making. He used to make her do that. He knew all her sensitive areas. He knew every part of her. He knew things no man will ever know, especially those standing in this club right now. She doesn't see the boy that was just holding her get his face bashed in and become replaced. He keeps her facing away from him, sliding his fingers across her waist. His light touch gives it away. She tenses. He won't let her turn around, keeping a tight hold, making her sway with him. He presses just the right areas that make her moan. What a beautiful sound it is. It is music to his ears. It brings back so many memories. Ones she has missed so much but would never admit. She can't stop leaning her head back against his shoulders. Him nipping at her ears, kissing her neck. Nothing stopping him from claiming her. She is his sun. The glitter dancing off the light. The glow that reflects off the shine in her perspiration. The dim light does nothing to take away the shine from her eyes. Pulling them closer together, she grabs hold of his hands and laces her fingers with his, hugging him closer, if that's possible. He whispers old memories of sun flares and shooting stars to her. His breath tickling the back of her neck, making her swoon all over, bringing her back to times of rebuilding and new growth. A time when the sun brought the future of a new day. A hazy fog seems to float through the air. Their eyes closed, not noticing. They are lost in each other. It isn't until the screaming starts. The rushing of people pushing past. The cries from around them. Then the heat of the flames. And the building burned and burned to the ground. Fire roared over the rooftop, raining ash from the sky. Shades of orange colored the heavens, flickering against the starry blue night. Agony-fueled screams echoed over the flames. They are trying to get out of the crumbling building, but most have lost the air they need to breathe. The oxygen being sucked from their lungs, only bringing the inferno higher and higher. People run around, looking for partners, brothers and sisters, lovers. Water rains from the firefighters' hoses, trying to tame the flame. The building is completely engulfed, no one going in and no one coming out. Ashes land on the few to make it out, getting seen by medical professionals. Burns that will stay to make them forever remember this horrid night. His eyes reflect the golden inferno, not affecting his stance as he glares down the blaze. His fist clenched together tight as he looks around, frantic that he can't see her. His electric stare searches through the crowd, unable to find his vibrant violet beauty, that only a few hours ago the color blended in with his, holding him close as they dance around the floor of the nightclub. They were molded to each other, fitting perfectly like a puzzle, not caring about the people gazing in longing, wanting what they have, the bond the two in the middle share. He moves past others, shoving past the ones trying to stop him. He needs to get closer. He needs to see for himself. Where is she? They were separated as the fire began to grow, as others began to run and scream. He tried hard to hold on to her. He had marks in his palms from her digging her nails in, her words still echoing in his head, her beautiful face showing fear of not getting out. When he felt her slip from his hold, his heart cracked, like it already knew what was about to happen. The heat doesn't bother him at first. He maneuvers around the rubble, looking for those purple sapphire eyes. Praying he gets to her in time. Ashes fall around him as he continues. His hand goes to his face, trying to protect himself from the burning flames. He tries to go to the place he lost her, but it looks nothing like the club anymore. The fire rages on, not giving him any sympathy. Then he hears her. He hears her calling out. While some have lost their will to speak, she still shrieks his name. He rushes forward, screaming her name. A hand reaches and grabs his arm. He stops and tries to keep standing, while this person tries to get up. The person is unrecognizable. His hand burning into his arm, He tries not to cry out. The person grip doesn't last long. They don't seem to have the energy to hold on. Once it loosens, he rips his arm out of their grasps. He calls out to her again, hoping to still hear her. She cries back and he rushes in, hoping to find her in time. But something neither of them don't have. Her voice gets louder as he continues. He knows he's close. With the fire roaring in his ears, it's hard to hear her, but he won't back down. Then, under some rubble, he sees her violet dress. It's frayed and burning, but the color stands out. He tells her not to move, that he will get her out. She whimpers in distress. He knows he's going to get burned, but saving her is more important. He squats down and grips under the mask, keeping them apart. With one heave, he pulls with all his strength and moves it out of the way. She's covered in burns and her leg looks broken, but he promises she will be safe now. He picks her up bridal style and hurries to get them out of the building. It is on the edge of collapsing, and if they don't get out now, they may never will. He attempts to go the way he came in, but it's blocked. So, he has to maneuver around and find a new way to the exit. She clings to him tightly, telling him to hurry. The exit comes into view, and he races towards it. Just as they pass through, the whole building goes down in flames.